Hi, I'm Brian Lord, Senior Vice President of Premier Speakers Bureau. I'm happy to be joined by the one and only Scott Rasmussen. Scott is the founder of Rasmussen Report. He's seen regularly on Fox News, on CNBC, on the BBC. So, Scott, thanks for lowering your standards long enough to be interviewed by me.
Well, Brian, it's great to be with you. And, I'm just happy somebody's asking me questions.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, Scott, a lot of companies right now, they are interested in learning more about the economy. How are you someone that can help them with that?
We track investor and consumer confidence every single night, and we have for just about a decade now, since right after the tragedies of 9/11. So we can tell what consumers are thinking about their own finances, about the overall economy, about the employment situation. We track specific areas like housing and perceptions of different industries and some of the issues that come up. And so this gives us not only information about the current news, but some real comparative data to track trends.
One of the other big things coming up, of course, are the 2012 elections. A lot of people are interested in. I have a lot of event planners out there who they're kind of torn. They want to have their audiences have this information, but they don't want to bring in this, former Republican politician or former Democrat or, spend a whole lot of money. What can you do to sort of bridge that gap for them?
Well, I was a Democrat, I think about 1980 or 81. I haven't belonged to either party since then. And, our job, we don't work for politicians from either party. We operate as a media company. We provide polls for our audience, and we make our money, by the way, by selling advertising and sponsorships. And what that means is I can say if a Republican says something dumb, I can say it's dumb. If a Democrat says it, I can do the same thing. And it's really been interesting. In 2006, we were polling more than anybody else. We were among the first to say that the Democrats would gain control of the Senate. Republicans didn't like us very much that year. 2010, the reverse happened, and Democrats said all kinds of bad things about us. But it was actually just their candidates that were struggling. We were the scorekeeper and all of that. And I think the larger issue is we tend to focus not so much on the candidates as on what the American people are saying and thinking. And so if I look back at the last few elections, it's pretty clear we can say that in 2006, 2008, and 10, Republicans and Democrats weren't the choice. Voters were just voting against whoever was in charge. And that's an important distinction to make. I'm a New York Giants fan. When the Redskins play the Cowboys, I want them both to lose. There's an awful lot of Americans that want both the Republicans and the Democrats to lose, and they just can't quite figure out how to bring that about.
Now, you're the president of one of the largest polling companies, in the world. What advantage is that to an event planner or to a company that's thinking about bringing you in?
We have data on just about anything that is in the news or in the discussion, whether it's who's going to win the Super Bowl or more substantive political or economic topics. We actually get together every morning with a news team, have a meeting to say, what is it that we need to be looking at? In a newspaper environment, you would send a reporter to cover that story. We actually assign a poll to do it. And so what that means is when I go to speak at an event, certainly we have trends from our consumer and investor index data. We have a track record over time of political things, but also whatever the newest events in the news are, we can tie that into the presentation. And that timeliness is very important because most people, they don't care about polls. They care about the topics we poll about. And when something is in the news, they want to learn how to interpret it in context. And look, I'm a history major, so context and putting things in that longer perspective, very important for me.
Now, you said you're a history major. What school did you go to?
I finished at DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana.
Yeah, you set me up for that. I'm not going to be able to interview DePauw alums too often, fellow DePauw alums, so I had to work that in somehow. You set me up pretty well. Now, when you speak, do you only spout off numbers?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, I used to think that what my job in the polling world was I would conduct a really good poll and thoughtful questions and give it to somebody and they would understand it. And in fact, when I started doing that, they had this blank look in their face and they would say, okay, tell me what it means. And so most of what I do is try and talk about how these things fit into real world perceptions. And again, just like I mentioned, the parties are like the Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. You can always find a way to to bring the numbers to life. And that is the key. It's highlighting what these numbers mean, not the numbers themselves. Now, obviously, data plays a part of it. And we'll be saying, okay, look, this issue is in the news. Here's what people think. But we'll also say, here's what that means going forward.
Now, one of the things we're really big at here at Premier is making the event planner look good and making their life easier. So you as a speaker, what are some of the things that you do to make the event planner look good or make their life easier?
Well, part of it is just being a decent human being. If there are supplemental events to go to and somebody wants to say hello ahead of time, absolutely do that. Always make sure that when I get to the site, I check in with the contact right away, because you know what? Sometimes they're nervous that the speaker isn't really going to show up.
True.
If there's time to talk afterwards, or if somebody wants to do a book signing or a meet and greet, or just stand there and take questions for a while, happy to do that. I really enjoy the interaction with people because I learn from every single event that I go to.
Yeah, it's like you never stop being a pollster, never stop gathering information. So it's and that's one of the things I get back from clients from events, and for people watching this, I booked Scott a ton for all different industries all over the country, and I always get that feedback back. He's so nice and so down to earth. He's really, really smart, but he still is able to really connect with people and bring that message home. So I always like that. So and Scott, I do have a follow-up question here if you do have a second. I know your new book, The People's Money, is coming out in January, February timeframe. I'm not quite sure. Can you give us a little sneak peek?
Yeah, it's coming out January 31st, and it's how the American people would resolve our budget crisis. And we took a look at the biggest issues in terms of where we spend the money, national security, Social Security, and Medicare, and tried to figure out what public response would be. I wrote the book, had a great team of people working with me, and the end result is, I guess the reason we have the problem today is because our political leaders haven't listened to the public too often. And what we find is there is something in the public attitudes that will offend just about every member of Congress. Conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. Voters are much more pragmatic. They want to see things get done. And so I think it's important for the public views to be heard, and that's why we put the book out.
Great. Well, Scott, thanks again for joining us, and look forward to having you speak to a lot more clients next year.
Thank you, Brian.